Right. Welcome everyone to chapter 11, the cosmic vision of Gita. Um, we have been reading these chapters, and today we are in episode 11, chapter 11, and I would like to start with, again, either Nadine or Kabir to pitch in uh, you know, uh, their initial thoughts after reading the chapter.
Yeah, maybe I can start with some of my takeaways from that chapter, because what I felt now reaching chapter 11 and this cosmic vision shows all the way that it takes really steps to go deeper within yourself and come to that realization. Like, I feel we all, or those who are seeking spiritual paths or want to really find themselves and their essence, you hear a lot about how it feels like, you read books, you hear from mystics or from gurus or whoever sharing how they experienced it when they touched that essence within themselves, right? So we are all having this kind of idea what it would be like. But I feel it's very beautiful how the book has evolved to this 11th chapter, and it took all these steps to reach there. It started, this first chapter was on the battlefield, where it was all about our inner wars, the enemies and everything. And it took such a few steps or many steps to reach that point where you are truly ready to see this vision and to be able to see it. And in this chapter, Arjuna also described how still he feels so fearful about it, to really touch this and to be able to have that glimpse, I would even say, so to really be there, and how he's also so in awe about that experience. So I feel everyone needs their own pace in their spiritual journey and their patience, and also the awareness that every step really matters towards that. And it's not a linear process. I think we discussed it in previous sessions also. That path to find yourself and your true essence can sometimes be like, like a chaos, and maybe 5 steps back, 1 forward, 1 left, and right, and down, and wherever. And at some point, maybe when you least expect it, then you're actually touching upon this true self of yours. And I feel that was very strongly coming out of that chapter.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, for me, it was pretty abstract, most of it, as like the last chapter. But for me, I think the interesting thing was where it says, I am time and destroyer of all. So basically, it's very interesting that literally defining as time, and as a Vipassana student, it's like everything is anitya, right? And by definition, that's basically the definition of time, that time will consume everything. And then and there's a very description of how Krishna will kind of swallow in everything, right? And as time will do the same thing, and how there's a very strong parallel between time and Krishna himself. And apart from that, for me, the devotion theme also stood out in this chapter, and now it talks about why devotion is very key for somebody to have this vision. This is where I had some questions. I'm not sure, if Arjuna has, there has been enough background, or if Arjuna was considered somebody who was on a devotional path, because it does make out a big deal of, and I'm assuming that's a big deal, but that particular vision was shown to Arjuna, which was not shown to a lot of people or anybody actually, for most part. And so why that specific, what's the context there? Why Arjuna? So those are a couple of things for me. I couldn't really, I couldn't understand the significance, but I think what Nadine said made a lot of sense to me. That probably that is what it was talking about. The significance of how, as you said, Nadine, that it can hit you anytime, and and yeah, like I don't imagine, like I have never thought about this. Like I have never in my head given a lot of significance of having a vision of God. So for me, that's like something where I don't connect that much that why this is so key, uh, basically. But I get it. Like that's the whole point of the spiritual part, to eventually have that vision or eventually get and meet and not in terms of meet, uh, in terms of joining into your creator. So from that perspective, that makes sense. But yeah, so that's a pretty poor job of just sharing my few pointers there. But Kabir, you want to go ahead and maybe add a little more beauty to to this chapter?
Yeah, I could probably, and my throat is not right, so I'll- excuse me for that throughout this session, maybe. But I'd probably try to expand a little bit on what Nadeem said. So, yes, this is my understanding that it is a visual, verbal depiction of a deeply personal, mystical experience that every seeker goes through. So, it's not like Arjun was visually looking at the body of Krishna and seeing something happening. But that's how one has to communicate such visions. There is sometimes no other way. And that is also the basis of a lot of mythological stories and so on. In Hinduism, there is Vedant, which is more mystical and philosophical. And then there is Puranas. Puranas is more visual and story and verbal depiction for common folks to be able to have some vague idea of what a mystic is experiencing. But in this case, and maybe somewhat answers your question, Shashank, that why Arjun is because Arjun, irrespective of just this lifetime, over several lifetimes, for him to be associated with an enlightened being like Krishna, and they were like the best friends actually. And Krishna does mentions that several times in Mahabharata, and he also refers that how for several lifetimes they have been companions in different ways, Krishna and Arjuna.
Can I ask you something? So does that also imply Vishnu took a lot of births? And that's where I got confused. Like because there's no, at least I've not heard in popular reference earlier births of Krishna. And then in that way, is Krishna just an enlightened being then? It's not an avatar of, like, because we have heard it more as an avatar of God, that God decided to take birth in form of Krishna, which feels very different from somebody like any one of us just getting enlightened, and then obviously all of us are gods, right? Like we are all the universe. So in that way, it makes sense to me. But then it conflicts a little bit with what I've learned over the time as a more traditional narrative I've heard as growing up.
It does get a bit confusing because in India, there are several, if I may say, school of thoughts or philosophies or worldviews what going on, even within Hinduism. Like there is something called Dvaitvad, which is dualism, and Vishishta Dvaitvad, and then Advaitvad. So these are different philosophies, right? And when we talk about Vedanta and Upanishads and what mystics are talking about, they speak from the space of oneness, which is where this chapter is also hinting. However, when we hear from the mainstream, often God is treated as something separate from you. So in order for God to take form, God has to be someone else than you are, right? So you have to be a believer of duality. So I would say, if you take the perspective of duality, if you are a separate soul and God is a perfect soul out there somewhere separate from you, then one can say, yes, the God took form of Krishna. But if you are God, it changes. So when I'm talking about, different lifetimes and how consciousness evolving in each form, and like you said, it is more of a perspective of a Buddha or Mahavir, where they actually saw that people were getting confused from that duality perspective, and they emphatically said there is no separate God out there. And so many people misunderstood their teaching in the beginning, using their minds, and they said they are talking about something absolutely different. They are atheists and we shouldn't listen to them. They are talking something opposite of what Vedas and Hinduism is talking. And in fact, some of the followers in Jainism and Buddhism also feel that, hey, don't try to put us with Hinduism. We are absolutely different. We are talking something again. But as I have walked on these paths and read the text and understood, I feel it's just, you may say, if you are looking at something from the top or from the side, from the top it may look like 2D, from the side it may look like 3D. It's same reality sometimes being seen in different ways, and sometimes you are speaking it from within time and space, and the mystic speaks from beyond time and space. They are not talking very differently. It's just different perspectives. If somebody experiencing duality will internally reach a point of unity, they would see the integration between them. I would leave it at that, because it will be very difficult to trying to reconcile these two intellectually. If that makes sense. Yeah. But catching the more important part, because we are more interested in how it is relevant in our day-to-day lives, right?
Yeah.
And how it is relevant to us, what this chapter is talking. So coming to that point, I feel that it is talking about the evolution of consciousness and a state where Arjun has been preparing, not just in this discussion, but for maybe several lifetimes. And he is ready, as Krishna is pointing, and as his guide is pointing, that I feel you're ready now, okay, to have this experience within you. He would guide Arjun to this point where Arjun could draw his identity and have this first clear glimpse. He has been having some glimpses, some idea, but he requests his guide that, hey, I think I'm ready. I have the faith. Show me. You have explained to me verbally. You have given me some hints, but show me that this experience. And of course, this vision, Krishna hints that can't be seen with your eyes. So you can't see it as a subject-object thing. It will be a spiritual personal experience. That is the divine eye. Even in Vipassana, if you remember, we are guided to see our breath. But what that means is feel your breath, right? So this is a way of saying. So when he talks about divine vision, it means a deeply mystical state where your attention will shift out of, drop all these objects, and subject is focused on itself. And like the chapter explains, and many seekers actually have confirmed this in their own journey, that when they had first vision of their identity dropping and they were not as prepared, there was like a great fear which came up. Oh my God, what is this? What is this? Suddenly they can't find who they are, where they are. They can't see. And Shashank is smiling because he had a glimpse of it in first Vipassana course. Maybe you can talk about it before I move forward.
Yeah, I was actually remembering that even before you brought this up, and I was like, yeah, now that makes sense. Like, and for me, that was, this was bad. You said my first Vipassana course, it was probably 5th or it was 7th day actually. And, I was very, like, I think, for me, it was progressing very quickly. Like I could sense my inner organs. I was feeling the taste of water. There's like, I had a lot of experiences before this happened. Like I think it's even like when you say it in a normal friend circle, it's hard to describe and you feel a little foolish, to be honest, to be telling that when you can say you can sense your like, and you can say you can see your inner organs, but when you say you see, you're basically feeling your inner organs. You're sitting in dhyan and you can take your attention to inside of your body and you can feel, like I could feel my lungs, I could feel the surface of it. And I think I could have described what the surface of my lung looks like just because I could feel it. And during that same Vipassana course, at some point, suddenly I felt I was sitting, like, it's again very hard to describe, but I was sitting in a lap of something, which was like, and I had no, and I was very happy, I was very centered, and it was a very unique experience, right? Like it was definitely and completely like there was no body at that point. That is for sure. I definitely felt there is no body. And suddenly, and I was feeling this, and suddenly I got scared. Like suddenly I got like, where am I? Will I be able to come out of this actually? And I think that fear itself just brought me out. So yeah, I could relate to that when you were saying this, and that's when it made a lot of sense that this chapter talks about that I'm fearful, and now I would like to see you back in your normal way. And it is so surprising that it matches that experience.
Yes, and it is mentioned by so many seekers across times and across countries and across languages that when they experienced, which sounds paradox, they experienced their disappearance and they panicked.
Yeah.
And you use the term, where am I?
Yes.
You don't even say who am I, you say where am I? Because we are so and then who is saying where am I? Very interestingly. There is an awareness which feels that it knows who I am.
Yeah.
And it is not true. Because it is not who it thinks, it disappears. And it's like, oh my God, where is my center of gravity here?
Yeah.
So that is, this confirms, like, as you can imagine, that this is about a deeply mystical personal experience. And like you mentioned at the beginning, that you are not so much interested in experiencing God. Maybe it has a sense, but it is actually not about experiencing God as an idea or an object or something outside. It's like you're experiencing who you are truly. And that has deep ramifications in your life then. Imagine you walking around knowing that you are beyond body mind. You have had so many lifetimes. This is just one little thing. Things are decided. How much impact it will have in your day-to-day suffering or lack of it or cravings and aversion, right? And then you truly are able to live a life of witnessing and peace and joy no matter what is happening, because you have seen that you are beyond all this death and birth and time and space. So from that perspective, it is for Arjun a deeply life-changing moment. And I can also relate in my own journey. I don't want to go into all the details yet, but I do want to mention that in terms of vision, I also want to differentiate. And I think the commentator in this particular version of Bhagavad Gita, Easwaran, has also hinted that there are a couple of kinds of vision Arjun was having. One was Savikalp Samadhi and Nirvikalp Samadhi. So I'm sure you all have had experiences where you, in your meditation particularly, where you had like visual visions or something where you would see something and it was deeply meaningful to you. I can definitely remember in one case where I thought almost I died during one of my retreats. And it was because it was so real. It didn't feel like a vision or imagining. I thought I actually went to another dimension, hellish realm, and experienced it. It felt so real. It was deeply meaningful to me. Oh my God. Like when we talk about suffering on this planet, on this earth, it's nothing compared to when we talk about the hellish realm, right? It was like something in me needed to be shaken up. So I had that vision in a subject-object kind of a way. I also had a vision once in a retreat where I felt like almost with my closed eyes that there is TV screen or something. It wasn't like a screen, but images were flowing at a very fast pace. And they are not images from this planet or these forms which I've ever seen. That part is very, very clear. They are not from this planet or movies or anywhere on National Geographic. I've never seen such images. They are completely different forms out of this world. And that also had a meaningful impact on me, seeing that where did they come from? What was that all about? So one is these kind of visions where you are observing, you as a subject is observing an object. But then the more, life-changing vision, which changes us deeply, is the nirvikalp, where you intuitively then, not just visually, you intuitively experience that you are not body-mind. and you are not space and you are not time and everything is changing and you are separate from all of this and you have always been there eternally. And that, like you both would also confirm, it's very difficult to communicate in words, but you know that it was so clear. It's so more clear than you saying that we are having this session, three of us. This experience is very real for us. But this intuitive experience that you are beyond the space and time and beyond this body mind is even more clearer. There is absolutely no doubt. So that kind of a nirvikal, the non-objective experience is life-changing and sometimes called self-realization. I would just add to it a little more and then maybe you can respond, you people. Another part of it is even some of the sages like Ramakrishna Paramahansa, who was Swami Vivekananda's guru, right? So if somebody is in this deep state and if someone is somewhat ready, they sometimes can enable that, a glimpse, you may say, right? And sometimes people take that too seriously, but all these sages say this is just a glimpse to inspire you. But in order for this to become your living reality, you have to go on your own journey, your sadhana. And that's where you said devotion. We'll talk about it hopefully later in our discussion, how critical that is and what it really means, right? Yeah. And so in case of Swami Ramakrishna Paramahansa, he did that. If you read Vivekananda's work, Vivekananda said that, hey, I don't believe in things unless I see them. And he's like, but are you ready to see it? He said, come on. If I'm not ready, who is? And he gets that glimpse and all his rationality and ideas about time and space and right, wrong and physics and reality and unreality, everything is shaken up. And from that day onwards, Vivekananda went on a journey to confirm that, oh my God, it does seem there is something more than the physical reality. I have had a very clear glimpse of it. Yeah. And rest of his life was a journey, you may say, to marinate and to sustain in that state.
Yeah, I have some comments, but Nadine, do you also have anything interesting in terms of any such experience which
Yeah, but the point is, how are they integrated in your daily life? Because yeah, great that you have these experiences, but how are they actually changing life? Like that's what I also come to. Yeah, it's great if you go to retreat and you have these experiences, but yeah, how is your daily life changing because of it?
Sorry to cut you there, Nadine, but I don't out of 18 chapters, there's one chapter dedicated to this. And I feel there is some significance about talking about this experience because I felt very, we have been talking about 10 chapters about, and how this experience is like, but I do feel there is some significance about talking about these experiences as part of your spiritual journey, because as I was sharing, I felt a little not comfortable sharing these experiences with my friends. And, I come from IIT and a lot of us are very trained in this education, which is basically, rooted into scientific inquiry. And I think all the spiritual path is also rooted into spiritual inquiry. But on the same hand, when you share such experiences, I feel sometimes there is a sense of ridicule, there is a sense of denial, there's a sense of justifying that as some kind of hallucination, some kind of experience which was not real. It was just something which was made up in your mind. So maybe, Kabir, you have a comment on that. But is it important to normalize this? Or is it irrelevant actually that this is not normalized in terms of sharing your experiences? But yeah, go ahead, Nadine, you were saying something.
Yeah, I'm just thinking here, Shashank, how is it important that others are validating that your experience is real or not real? I mean, you experienced it, so whoever says it's a hallucination or whatnot, this is their choice, but you know what you experienced, no? So I wouldn't put importance of how others see that.
No, it's not about me, right? So I'm not talking about me and my like how does that impact me or my validation. It is about why is it important to talk about atoms. Every child talks about atoms in school. Why do we go and like nobody is actually doing anything with atoms in their real life, right? But there's a whole for 5 standards we're talking about electrons, neutrons, and treat them as a reality, which is a reality because somebody saw it and then reported in a book, and then people read it. And for them, it is not real in the sense that they saw it, but it is real in the sense that they read it in a book. So I'm saying, in the sense of having a broader spiritual inquiry and having a more broader acceptance in the world about spirituality, is this important?
May I say something?
Yeah.
I think it's a really good point and very much relevant to this chapter, because it is sort of talking about vision or a mystical experience. And then I think Shashank has brought a really good question here. I think it's very relevant in the sense, I feel that a lot of times when people are by luck or due to their past karmas or past sadhanas have certain glimpses, but they are not certain what it means, and if it is just like a dream, or does it really mean anything what they saw. If they have a sangha or people around them, their guides or family whom they trust or they look up to, youngsters, encourage them to dismiss it as hallucination and ridicule it, then they never follow that path.
Yeah,
In case of Vivekananda, when he had that glimpse and he intuitively felt that this guy who looked like a madman, I think there is more to him. He had that courage, or hopefully the Sangha, or even the culture in India, for example. It is, you are not dismissed as a madman if you are talking about mystical experiences. In certain times, for example, in Christianity, in Middle Ages, you would just be killed or put in prison if you talk about any vision of oneness where you feel that you are feeling one with God, right? So so there is definitely some impact whether people around you as you're starting on your journey are supportive, are encouraging, or you're feeling ashamed. And Shashank shared this personal experience that he's surrounded by intellectuals, and he felt, oh my God, I had this beautiful experience and I can't share with my best friends even, because they would call it, my own friends actually sometimes called it mumbo jumbo and what the hell are you doing? And I agree with you, Nadine, that at some point you become so clearer personally that no, this is something real and this is deeply meaningful, sometimes more meaningful from what is happening in your phenomenal life in terms of relationships or career. You feel, no, this is deeply meaningful and I'm going to just protect it and I'm going to go deeper into this. But unfortunately, in certain cases, especially children, they sometimes have these visions or glimpses and they talk to parents or some elders and they are just told to ignore. And that also, unfortunately, has been shared with me by people that they were walking on this beautiful path, but they were not so confident yet. And the discouragement from their loved ones made them walk away and they lost 20 years of their life. So, yes, there is some sense in a society being hopefully more open. And ironically, I feel the best of the scientists, like Einstein, if you read his works, he seems to honor this intuition and subjective experience far more, even people who worked on quantum physics. Because if they see anyone who is talking about dismissing the personal experience and only accepting the objectivity, because these people are saying, what is objectivity really? You know, in their research, they have gone to a place where they are saying, hey, objectivity is not absolute. It is just a probability. And so your experience, your vision must not be dismissed. But I do want to add a word of caution. if I may say, at the same time, because I usually see one extreme or the other. You all must also have come across people who greatly overvalue every glimpse, every vision, and they talk it as if that is so much more important, that they went to a retreat and the most important thing is this form they saw with great wings and so on. And they start painting those forms and talking only about those things and think that they are divine because they had this experience. So you have seen that is another catch actually. So they see something different from them and they see it as something magnificent experience is the goal of their practices. And then they lost the way. There was some certain meaning probably in their for their inner journey. But if you talk too much about it and make a story out of it, and then your ego starts feeling special because I had these 10 experiences. Oh, you are Guruji, you are having experience. I wish I can have this experience. People are after these experiences rather than the true evolution. And that is why great guides like Buddha discouraged also. So on one hand, we are saying, yes, we should be able to share with someone who can relate. And I wish there are enough conscious beings to say, no, there is some meaning to it. Good. It has some, it is reflecting that you are going deeper into your journey, and please carry on and don't dwell on it too much. But this is wonderful. And the other, we don't want the overvaluation or the undervaluation and dismissing. There is certain value in these experiences. I also want to add one last thing. Something addressing to Nadine's point in the beginning, where she said, what is the point of these experiences? How does it affect your daily life, right? And I absolutely agree that if it is not, for example, the first ever mystical experience, I would call it mystical experience I had, was where I could foresee death and an accident sitting in a vehicle. And it's such a clear glimpse, a repeated visual premonition, very, very clear premonition that someone will die, and they died half an hour, right? That did have an impact in a very positive way in my life, that, oh my God, are things destined? Oh, let me go back and read. There is something called theory of karma, and they are saying things are predestined. Is death pre-decided? Are events pre-decided? What the hell does it mean? I was an extreme atheist, yes, but even cynic. I was quite cynical before I had this experience. Nobody was able to convince me externally to drop my cynicism, but this experience, this premonition did that to me. It was deeply meaningful to me. But if I share it with others, maybe people who really trust me, are close to me, will give a little bit of importance. Others will think that, he probably hallucinated. How does it matter? It doesn't matter. But for me, it was deeply meaningful, nevertheless. So do we also want to talk, I think Shashank had mentioned about devotion. Maybe we touch on that.
Yes.
Right. So Shashank had mentioned how, and me too, actually, the last verse in this chapter. In fact, if you have a book, it will be good if somebody can read the last verse, the very last verse. I think it's number 53 or something.
Yes. So the last passage, I'll read it. It's so Krishna says, it is extremely difficult to obtain the vision you have had. Even the gods long always to see me in this aspect. Neither knowledge of the Vedas, nor austerity, nor charity, nor sacrifice can bring the vision you have seen. But through unfailing devotion, Arjuna, you can know me, see me, and attain union with me. Those who make me the supreme goal of all their work and act without selfish attachment, who devote themselves to me completely and are free from ill will for any creature, enter into me.
Yes. Thanks. So this last couple of lines, I feel that really was the part which touches me, and I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, which is sometimes when we talk about devotion, we think, again, you have to put God outside and do some rituals, and that is part. Devotional path, what we see in Hindu households in mainstream India. But devotion is far more than that. Even Buddha, who spoke against such rituals or pujas, for him, when he was asked what is the most important aspect on a spiritual path, he said, number one, he says Saddha in that language, which means devotion. Saddha means devotion. And what kind of devotion he's talking about? He's not talking about devtas and gods. And he's saying this is the most critical part. And this is like the unflinching commitment, that longing, and this sometimes at phenomenal world, you see people who are obsessed with something in phenomenal world. And in this case, what Krishna is hinting is, if someone is like so clear, so tired of this phenomenality and this impermanence and these ups and downs and suffering, they are saying enough is enough. I have had some glimpses, and I think there is answer here on this path. I am going to commit to it. I want to be one with this supreme reality, and I want to end this suffering. So that sort of commitment is what he's talking, as I understand this last verse, that if you are unflinchingly focused on me, when he says, me is the supreme reality within, you are committed to it. You have that in mind. When he says that in mind, it doesn't mean only that you're thinking about it analytically. He means to say that no phenomenal goal, no craving aversion is more important than this goal. Nothing can throw you off. You don't say that, okay, next 5 years, let me build this company, then I will work on myself. Then I will work on inner journey. So he's saying that if only, in fact, he's saying you can do away with all the other things which are sometimes advised by gurus. He says you don't have to read Vedas, don't have to do rituals, don't have to do chanting, don't have to do puja. Just want me. Like, for example, somebody drowning wants air. Just want me. If you really want to be with the supreme reality, single-mindedly, you'll get me. And that I understand in this context is what he's saying, devotion, the faith, the longing, the wanting. It's like a lover, really just longing more than I have to see my loved one. I don't care. I'll burn everything I have. I'll give away all the money I have. I just have to meet my beloved. That is the one goal. So if that kind of longing starts burning within our hearts, that more than anything else does the job, is what he's hinting. And that also has been something which has been touching me a lot recently. Sometimes you are talking about so many things and then one thing really hits you. That's all there is. That is the most important thing. That love, right? So, yeah, I thought it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I think you talk about love, and I think the next chapter is titled The Way of Love, which is referring to devotion. So I think it sets that stage for the next chapter that we're going to talk about. And for me, I can relate to what you said very much. That for me also, I have never considered myself on bhakti for a long time. And more recently, the more I commit to the path, I also feel this is more about Shraddha than anything else. And this is about completely letting go and completely trusting with your Shraddha in the process, with the devotion that this will happen. And you just, like you put all your faith, and then the faith not in terms of, as you I think already said very clearly, not in terms of rituals and chanting, and it's like just some at a very deep level, a sense of knowing, believing, knowing, right? Having that faith in the pure consciousness and in the universe that it will do what is best for you, basically. So
I may just slightly add, and then maybe Nadine can cover. I just want to add that even when we take a 10-minute break from our autobiography, we trust that everything will be okay if we leave past and future, because our egoic mind would like to tell us, don't take break. Let's keep thinking. Let's keep planning. And even that is an act of faith, of devotion, that no, I will let go and life will take care of me. So even for doing it 10 minutes, imagine, that is how our hold which egoic mind has got on our minds. It doesn't want to give us a break. We are watching breath, even during observing breath, in between it jumps and it says, okay, let's think about this and this and this. So this faith is something which helps us. No, I'm just going to be with my breath, and God will take care, life will take care of life. I trust it.
I have nothing to add. That was beautifully put. Thanks.
Great. All right, then. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And we'll see you again in a week's time with the next chapter, which is The Way of Love.
Thanks for being